New York, the Empire State. A beacon for dreamers, schemers, and wanderers for centuries. Beneath its glimmering surface, behind every neon light and endless tide of humanity, something older stirs. Where ambition runs high, desperation often follows. And where dreams are broken, the ground tends to keep the memory. This episode, we step through New York's haunted heart. From the abandoned corridors of a once-bustling asylum, to the lonesome trails of a mourning mother, to the steel arteries beneath Manhattan, where the dead ride alongside the living. We'll explore not only the events, but the environments that allowed them to happen, the social pressures, the historic backdrops, and the cultural belief that gave birth to hauntings. Because every ghost story started as a human story. So light a candle, sit back, and let the city go quiet. The dead have been waiting long enough. I'm Drifter Voyages, and this is the 50th Room Podcast.
Shadows in the moonlight, waltzing through the air, a dance of mystery I wouldn't dare. The echo of footsteps, a cold night's charm, wrapped in a spell safe from harm.
Before there were modern psychiatric hospitals, retirement homes, or even structured social services, there were poorhouses. Stark institutions built not out of compassion, but out of necessity. Rolling Hills Asylum, established in 1827 in East Bethany, New York, was one such place. But calling it an asylum is generous. It was a dumping ground, a warehouse for society's inconvenient. The mentally ill, the impoverished, the widowed, the orphaned, disabled war veterans, the elderly, and even criminals whose offenses were deemed too minor for prisons, yet too disruptive for polite society, all resided here. In the early 19th century, American society was grappling with new social realities. Urbanization, economic shifts, and waves of immigration. With no federal safety net, local governments bore the burden of caring for those who could not care for themselves. Poorhouses, like Rolling Hills, sprang up as a grim solution. Originally inspired by the moral treatment movement, a belief that structured environments, fresh air, and moral guidance could heal troubled minds, these institutions quickly degenerated. Overcrowding, underfunding, and rampant corruption stripped away their idealistic foundations. Treatment became punishment. Patients were subjected to humane practices. Things like ice baths intended to shock the mind into submission, or restraint chairs and isolation cells for those deemed disruptive, or, sadly even, electroconclusive therapy, early forms, administered without anesthesia, often leading to fractures, memory loss, and psychological scarring rather than healing. The line between patients and prisoner blurred until it nearly vanished. In places like Rolling Hills, suffering was not a side effect. It was the air itself. Among the many souls confined within its crumbling walls was Roy Krause, known affectionately and sometimes mockingly as the Gentle Giant. Roy stood over 7 feet tall, his massive frame the result of gigantism, a rare and poorly understood condition at the time. His size made him a target for ridicule and fear. Accounts say Roy loved simple pleasures, children's picture books, moments of sunlight at the window, the occasional kind word. His mental faculties were those of a young child trapped in an enormous, aging body. His family abandoned him early on, either out of shame, fear, or exhaustion. Rolling Hills became his only home. When Roy died, alone, unwanted, and unclaimed, no one came for his body. He was buried in an unmarked grave, lost among hundreds of others just like his. Sadly, Roy's story is not rare. In places like this, names faded as quickly as faces. Since Rolling Hills' closure in the 1970s, the building has stood as a decaying relic, and a magnet for those seeking proof that sorrow leaves stains. Visitors and paranormal investigators alike have reported chilling phenomena. Things like shadow figures slipping between doorways or racing across the shadow hallway, seen only in fleeting peripheral glimpses. Or disembodied voices, soft cries, whispers of names, giggles, or sobs captured on recording equipment when no one else is present. Unseen touches, cold hands brushing against arms, sudden drafts in rooms sealed from the wind. And even objects moving unaided, particularly small items like marbles, dolls, and children's books, as if Roy or others were still trying to find comfort. Some have even claimed to hear the faint thud of giant footsteps echoing along the empty corridors late into the night. Local lore speaks of a hidden network of tunnels beneath the asylum, once used to discreetly transport the dead to the potter's fields without alarming the other residents. It is said that if you stand quietly near the old service entrance, you can still hear the echoes of wooden cartwheels creaking over stone. Another whispered tale tells of the Screamer, an unseen presence in the former solitary confinement wing. Investigators have captured sudden bursts of agonizing screams on tape, though no living soul was nearby, and the atmosphere was quiet. Some believe it's the spirit of a woman wrongfully confined and silenced for the rest of her life. We often like to think of hauntings as grand spectacles, the clash of good and evil, the dramatic vengeance of the wronged. But in truth, most hauntings are quieter, subtler, sadder. They are echoes of abandonment, sorrow, that has nowhere else to go. Rolling Hills Asylum is not haunted by monsters. It's haunted by what society chose to forget. The old, the sick, the different, swept into the dark corners and left to fade into the peeling walls and rotting floors. Ghosts, perhaps, are less about death and more about loneliness. In places like Rolling Hills, it's not just spirits that linger. It's the heavy memory of how easily we leave each other behind.
Shadows in the moonlight waltzing through the air, a dance of mystery I wouldn't dare. The echo of footsteps.
Abandonment leaves echoes, but so does loss. Not anger, not rage, just an aching grief that refuses to fade. Next, we leave the fields of East Bethany behind and head towards Lake Ontario, and a mother who will never stop looking.
The velvet night, street lamps dimmed, no soul inside. A saxophone sighs in a smoky haze, guiding me through this spectral maze.
Durand Eastman Park is a hidden sanctuary, a place where the wild rolls quietly against the edge of the city. Stretching across nearly 1,000 acres on the shore of Lake Ontario, it's a tapestry of thick woods, crumbling cliffs, rolling hills, and the winding trails that seem to fold reality in on itself. Here, the noises of the modern world fall away, but so does the barrier between the living and the dead. For tucked in the scenery landscape lies one of New York's most enduring and sorrowful legends, the Lady in White. The figure of the Lady in White is a universal symbol, a spectral mother, a wronged woman, a restless soul woven into the very fabric of folklore across the globe. In Latin America, she is La Llorona, the weeping woman doomed to wander riverbanks, eternally searching for the children she lost, or the children she took. In Germany, the Was Frau haunts castles and noble houses, foretelling death and misfortune. In Japan, the Onryo, vengeful spirits, appear draped in the ceremonial white of funeral garments, bringing ruin upon those who wronged them. Even in Ireland, the Banshee wails in spectral white, a harbinger of sorrow. Can you see the similarities? Wherever you find human hearts capable of breaking, you find her. Each culture gives her a different name. Here, in Rochester, New York, she is simply known as the mother who never stopped searching. Between 1900 and 1920, the Rochester area underwent a turbulent period, A growing city grappling with rapid industrialization, immigration, and social change. Durand Eastman Park, still relatively undeveloped, bordered thick, isolated woods and the vast, moody expanse of Lake Ontario. During those years, multiple child disappearances and unsolved deaths were recorded near the shoreline. Official reports were vague, often blaming accidents, exposure, or even family negligence. But whispered among locals were darker stories. A child lured into the woods, never seen again. A grieving mother who wandered the trails day after day, frantically searching until her own body was found near the cliffs, battered by storm and sorrow. Some believe it was this unnamed woman whose grief was so profound, so violently unfinished, that it etched itself into the very land that is known now as Durand Eastman Park. Grief leaves marks that neither wind nor time can erase. For over a century, visitors at Durand Eastman have reported chilling, unexplained phenomena, experiences that seem to ripple outward from one terrible sadness. Things like flashlights unexplicably die, even with fresh batteries, as if the very air devours the light. Dogs, otherwise known to be fearless, freeze, whimper, and sometimes refuse to step forward down certain trails. Electronic equipment, cameras, phones, even vehicles, stutter and fail without warning near the dense woods by the lakeshore. And on still nights, the faint sound of a music box, playing a broken lullaby, drifts across the empty park, though no source can ever be found. One of the most chilling modern encounters came from a professional photographer. At sunset, he wandered the trails, capturing the quiet beauty of the lake and its reflections of burning orange skies. Later, reviewing his shots at home, he paused. In one frame, standing at the water's edge, was a woman. She's dressed in flowing white, her features blurred as if the camera could not or would not focus on her. In the moments he remembered taking the shot, he was alone. The shore had been utterly empty at that time. Some locals say the lady in white is merely searching, still hoping, across death and the decades, to find her lost child. Others whisper darker possibilities. The possibility that she mistakes living children for her own and tries to lead them into a forest for them to never be seen again. Or that she despises the living for surviving when her child did not, and seeks to share her sorrow with those who dare to linger too long. There are tales of cars found abandoned alongside Lakeshore Boulevard, doors hanging open, their drivers missing without a trace, and also of hikers who vanished, their last known location traced back to the trails near the old stone wall, a place now nicknamed the Mother's Gate. Why do stories of the Lady in White endure while so many others fade, I wonder? Maybe it's because they touch something primal. The fear of loss, the agony of unanswered grief, or the desperate hope that love, even broken, even twisted by tragedy, endures beyond death. I don't believe she is a monster. I think she is a memory, a feeling. She is the sound of a mother's voice calling into the dark, long after the world had stopped listening. Grief doesn't end when the heart stops beating. It lingers, it grows, and it becomes something else entirely. So, if you ever find yourself at Durand Eastman Park, standing by the still waters as twilight gathers around you, if the trail ahead seems colder than the rest, or if you hear the faint, broken notes of a lullaby where there should only be silence, maybe, just maybe, it's time to turn around and go home.
A cat's cry pierces the velvet night. Street lamps.
Above ground, New York pulses with life, but below it, it hums with memory. In the dark arteries beneath Manhattan, the dead ride alongside the living.
Shadows in the moonlight waltzing through the air, a dance of mystery I wouldn't dare.
The New York City subway, an artery pulsing beneath one of the busiest cities on Earth. It opened its doors in 1904, promising modern marvels, speed, connection, opportunity. Today, it carries over 4 million riders daily, a sea of faces blurring past one another beneath the city's heavy skin. But buried in that endless motion is history soaked in blood, tragedy, and something that refuses to stay still. Building the subway was an engineering triumph and a human tragedy. During its earliest constructions at the turn of the century, at least 30 documented deaths occurred. Workers crushed by cave-ins, suffocated by gas leaks, or drowned in sudden underground floods. And I can believe that many more injuries went unrecorded, hidden by companies eager to meet deadlines and public expectations. Men toiled day and night, carving out tunnels beneath the city, often with little more than a pick, shovels, and unstable dynamite charges. And yeah, you can guess how that probably went down. Some say the walls themselves are laced with the bones of those who died there, their bodies unrecovered in the rush to move forward. And sadly, the tragedies did not end once the subway was complete. One of the deadliest accidents in U.S. transit history, the Malbon Street wreck of 1918, scarred the system forever. During a citywide transit strike, an inexperienced motorman lost control of a Brooklyn rapid transit train as it barreled into a sharp curve beneath the Malbon Street tunnel, now known as Empire Boulevard. The result was catastrophic. 5 train cars derailed and splintered like matchsticks. Over 93 passengers were killed, many mangled beyond recognition. The survivors spoke of blood slicking the walls, and disembodied cries lingered long after rescue crews had left. Even today, transit workers report strange phenomena near the now-defunct Malbon Tunnel. Cold spots, fleeting shadows, and the feeling of unseen eyes watching from the darkness. The subway isn't just a system, it's a labyrinth of loss carved into the bones of the city. Scattered across New York are the so-called ghost stations, abandoned platforms and tunnels long forgotten by the daily commuter. There's Worth Street Station, closed in 1962. It is now a little more than a dusty, silent corridor, glimpsed only from passing trains. And then there's City Hall Station, a beautifully tiled architectural marvel. It lies dormant beneath Lower Manhattan, locked away like a time capsule. But empty does not always mean unoccupied. Conductors have reported seeing flickering of movement in their rearview mirrors, figures standing patiently at sealed platforms where no living passengers wait. Maintenance workers tell stories of hearing phantom announcements, garbled voices calling out stops that no longer exist. Over time, the New York City subway system has developed its own chilling folklore. There's the silent conductor. Sightings of a uniformed man from the early 1900s have been reported by night riders. He stands at the edge of deserted platforms, raising his lantern to signal an arriving train, but then simply vanishes when approached. There's the vanishing passengers. Some commuters report seeing someone board the train at one stop, only to realize moments later that the seat that they were occupying is now empty and no one recalls that passenger exiting. And shapeless shadows along certain stretches, particularly near abandoned tunnels. Passengers glimpse dark, human-sized shapes pacing the walls, keeping pace with the speeding trains even, only to melt into the concrete when the lights flicker. And perhaps the most chilling is the trace walker. A figure described as wearing an old workman's uniform, carrying a dim, flickering gas lamp. Some say he appears to warn trespassers away from the tracks, a spiritual protector. But others claim he beckons them closer towards the third rail, towards the tunnel that he supposedly met his end. Urban folklore scholars often describe subways as a liminal space, a place not truly of one world or another, neither fully above ground nor below, neither stationary nor in motion. A place between destinations, between states of being, perhaps even between life and death. In liminal spaces, the veil between realities thins. Here, time folds strangely. Memories, or something older, can seep into the cracks. It's no wonder the dead might linger, lost among the living, moving with the trains, unseen, but not unfelt. Next time you ride, listen between the sounds, between the rattle of wheels and the screeching of brakes. You might hear breathing from a seat you thought was empty. You might feel a tug at your sleeve from a hand that isn't there. Or you might catch, just for a heartbeat, the flash of a face in the reflection of the train windows, one that doesn't belong to anyone still among the living.
The candle flickers.
And there you have it. 3 stories, 3 windows into New York's dark heart. An asylum that mirrors society's cruelty. A mother whose sorrow etched itself into the shoreline. And a city's lifeblood still haunted by its dead. These aren't just tales to chill the spine. They're reminders that history doesn't live in books alone. It breathes in walls and clings to lake shores. And it rides alongside you on the rails. Thank you for listening to this episode of the 50th Room Podcast. If these stories moved you, please share them with a friend. Leave a review. It helps more than you know. And if you have a story to share, please send it to us. We love reading your stories. Until next time, stay aware, stay compassionate, and stay curious. And remember, some rides never end.
Shadows in the